You are listening to the Project Z Factor Show, storytelling at its finest, with your host Zayet on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM. Because this is your voice, your platform, and your impact, we cover interviews, research, education, music, documentaries, entertainment, and advocacy. This is more than a podcast. This is the Z Factor. So enter at your own risk. You are listening to the Z Factor show, Project Z Factor, on 103.5 Hindsight Media Radio. I am your host, Zayet, and this is our second podcast of the year. If you did not tune into our first podcast, remember we air on the fourth Thursday of the month. Yes, this is a monthly radio show, or you can call it a podcast. I prefer a radio show. I've always wanted to work in media and communications, so this has given me the opportunity to do what I love after marriage, after kids. I'm still married, but after the whole experience and learning how to adapt to different roles as a wife and mother, I started this over 15, 16 years ago and had to put some things on hold. I'm sure some of you all can relate, both men and women. And so now I am pursuing what I love to do, which is to communicate, educate, inform, and connect with other people. I want to talk today about my true passion, one of them. I love speaking to our community about the issues that affect us the most, whether we're a community of African Americans or you want to say blacks, of women, of children, of people who are in certain situations that don't allow them to be seen as equals or treated as equals. I am the person that loves to advocate for the underdog and be a voice to the unheard. God gave me that quick, I would say, mission statement a long time ago. He told me that most of my life experiences have been advocating for the underdog, which I myself was one, and being a voice to the unheard, which in my life I experienced feeling unheard and not appreciated. So, this is something that I truly enjoy doing. Today's episode will focus on sex trafficking and human trafficking. This is one of my passions. I love to advocate and educate the community on the epidemic known as sex and human trafficking. If you visit our website, JermainePhoenixCommunity.com, and go to the advocacy and training tab, you will see that we have a workshop and also a curriculum called A Soul Untarnished, which will be a book. It would really teach most people or educate them, inform them on what it is to be sex trafficked, human trafficked, how it happens, and how do we prevent it. I love the title A Soul Untarnished because it gives people the opportunity to educate themselves, enlighten themselves, and evolve in this mission. I want you to know that we want you to educate yourself because we're passionate about this topic. We want to enlighten you on the different dynamics of how this topic is now considered an epidemic. And finally, we want to evolve you from an audience to an advocate, ambassador, activist, or whatever you feel led to do. We are here to tell the stories of the women, the men, the young boys who are involved in this lifestyle. And yes, sometimes the perpetrators have a story to why they are where they are. Doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean that we should give them special attention, but we do have to come to grips that in order to rectify or solve this epidemic, we need to hear both sides. And working in sex trafficking for over a decade, volunteering as well as working, I have learned and heard from both sides of the story. Just a little bit about my experiences with sex trafficking. You know, most things that are a passion for you, they come from either anger or pure joy. And for me, this scenario, or the scenarios that women and young girls and now young boys face, it angers me. It always starts close to home, family life, history, generational curses, as you may say. It runs in the bloodline. It runs in, you know, from culture to culture, or from family to family, or from generation to generation. So it affected my home like so many others. And it was something that I was ashamed of and did not understand why God wanted to use me to speak on this, because I never wanted to admit or associate with sexual exploitation within the family. It happens. I'm going to talk to you about just some of the stories that I've read in the past, and I want you to really hear what it sounds like from a person whose voice is unheard. Did you hear about the story? A 14-year-old girl lured from home, locked in a U-Haul for sex by three men. A young woman going to a party with other women is left at the party to be sex trafficked by a girlfriend of hers. An 8-year-old being molested by her mother's boyfriend. A teenage runaway with her boyfriend, who is a pimp and sells her to his friends. A homeless foster care child, now 18, homeless, no shelter, nowhere to go, but inside the car of a trafficker in order to stay warm, eat, or sleep in a nice place. These are the voices of the unheard, and we are their voice. You are their voice. My mission is to tell the stories of others, to be a voice to the unheard, and an advocate for the underdog. The platform of Jermaine Phoenix Community, our goal is to bridge community, family, and God. When you have sexual exploitation or you've been sexually assaulted, that is a soul tarnished. It truly destroys a woman or a man's spirit if not healed and cleansed. So, my purpose is to help eradicate the epidemic of sex trafficking, human trafficking, and sexual exploitation of minors and women. We've created programs at Jermaine Fitness Community to train three groups or to inform three groups, that's community, survivors, and families. When I speak and have spoken to women and young girls who have been sex trafficked or molested or exploited, it normally and usually starts at the home front. It either starts from a void, a lack of, or no parental guidance and love. That is how the foundation of a young person becoming a victim, if you would call them that, of exploitation. So, the purpose of Jermaine Phoenix Community is to target our community and help our young women and children who have been taken advantage of. That's what we do, and that's what I love to speak on when we go around Georgia. If you don't know, Georgia is a hot hub, meaning we are a $1 billion industry only in the state of Georgia. Why? Because of what? What do you think is the number one reason why we are a hot hub? Think about it. It's the airport, Hartsfield. We can have people be trafficked and smuggled from anywhere around the world because of our airport. It hits all corners. Another hot transportation where a lot of sex traffic victims are smuggled is on 85 and 20 trucks. I'm watching the series Big Sky, and if you haven't seen that on CBS. It starts off about a case of girls who were taken for sex trafficking. And we say in the sex trafficking world, as we're trainers and working with other foster care uh, agencies, we talk about how 85, you think these trucks are carrying cargo of food and supplies. They're actually children and women, and they are being trafficked and taken away from their family and what they know, whether they've been lied to, forced to, or tricked. Now they are going to live a life of pain and sorrow and most likely death. Did you know that the average life of a sex trafficking victim is 7 years? That's it. If they make it to 7 years and they haven't been rescued, it is a miracle. And if they are rescued before 7 years, it is a blessing. What is sex trafficking? It is a form of modern day slavery in which individuals perform commercial sex through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. So that means someone can snatch your child as they're walking. That's force. Fraud is taking someone who has been in foster care. Another hot spot of Georgia, we have a high epidemic of foster care children. Well, if their family didn't want them when they were younger, and if they're African American or brown and they're boys or girls and they're older, they're definitely not getting adopted. So they have no family, they have no foster home. And when they become 18, where do you think they go? What do you think they do? How do you think they get their help? They have no one. When they're 18, they're released. Of course, foster care homes and agencies do the best they can do, but most of them are limited in resources, funding, and assistance. So, what do sex traffickers do? The people who exploit these young adults becoming adults in the world, they study and they watch and they drive up and down the street every day around the known foster care homes. Why? Because they know that soon a little male or a little female who is becoming an adult is going to need somewhere to stay, someone to support them. So they use fraud. They act like they're their friends. They, buy them food. They may not ask for anything in the very beginning, but eventually what they have offered as quote unquote free service, they want and render their payment. And that will be most likely through sexual exploitation, whether it's pornography or sex or dancing or labor or organ trafficking. Yes, it is a thing. You think that just because a child is missing, that, oh my God, they're either runaways or they're sex trafficked or they're labor trafficked. No, someone in another country may want their organs. And African American and brown children are high state for organ donations because we're considered athletic by our body shapes and how we're able to perform in certain areas. Of course, they're looking for healthy young children, and they're selling millions and millions of dollars on organs. I also watch a documentary about the young guy, and I cannot remember his name, but it was a 4 or 5 part series about the young guy who was supposed to be a model. He went to California and he got into the lifestyle of sex trafficking. He didn't make it as a model, started stripping. Young black guy, true story, right here in Atlanta. And the next time you go to my website, maybe I'll write something about that because it touched my spirit. But eventually he began selling his services and he used the app where he was moving all around and driving all around Atlanta and other states. He started going to other states to meet men. But specifically, that was the lifestyle that he chose. He was an adult, and they found his body in a rural area in California. They say that you don't want to drive through this place. This is about as small as your pinky finger, but they have been known to have some heinous things happen. And boy, I wish I could remember the story. But the point is, they found his body decomposed. Eyes were gone. I don't remember, major organs were gone, and no one knows anything. And this is also a place where they don't like different cultures. It's known to be very racist as well. So the stories, they just pour in. In the last 10 years, I work with the Dream Center. I work with Out of Darkness. I work with Wellspring. I work with these organizations to be an ambassador and go speak out into the community. I've also worked with young mothers who have lost their children to the life of sex trafficking, whether through ignorance or by force. And so my job was to coach and educate them on feeling good about themselves and building self esteem. Also, it allowed me to heal some wounds in my own self as a mother and a parent um, of a lifestyle that I lived. Not through the same way these women did, but just being exposed to certain things very early, very inappropriately. So it was really a great experience for me to work with these young mothers who felt like they did not have a voice and they wasn't worthy, and their children either didn't know who they were, knew who they were, but would heard so many negative things about them that they didn't respect them, or they just didn't feel worthy. And so this was such a growing experience for me because I was going in there to do some communications and teach them how to get jobs. You know, that was my background. So I was like, I'm going to go in there as a trainer and teach on communication and how to get a job. And God just spoke to me in my quiet time and said, no, there were a couple options they asked me. They asked me to do parenting. And I was like, I'm not doing parenting, in my mind. But lo and behold, the Lord had a different reason for me to do the parenting. So I chose it, and it was one of the best experiences that I enjoyed. So let me go into human trafficking. Human trafficking is modern day slavery. It involves the use of, again, force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. So some people are snatched up and told they're going to be a nanny, but they don't get paid. And one time I was going to, and I don't want to bad mouth this company, so this is only hearsay. Maybe I won't say anything, but I was going to work for a company that does like au pairs, where people come in from different countries to live with families, and they help them out and they get paid for that. Well, some of them don't get paid. Well, that is a form of human trafficking, and so family members may go and get other family members and promise them jobs and so forth, and they never get paid. So those are some of the examples. People who hire people for restaurant jobs or in the farm and in the areas of agriculture, but they're not getting paid. So that is human traffic. What is sexual exploitation? It is the sexual abuse of children and youth through the exchange of sexual acts for either drugs, food, shelter, protection, or other basic needs of life or money. So these are some of the areas where people are exploited, groups are exploited. Young women and children are exploited, the most vulnerable, and sometimes even our elderly are exploited. So, this is an enlightenment to you to understand that it could be happening right in your neighborhood, under your nose. I know some people believe that it only happens in the inner city, but it is occurring in the suburbs. And I am actually going to be a part of a workshop that is talking about this. I am connected to different groups of sex trafficking, like the Institute of Human Trafficking in Atlanta. And they are doing a workshop on this new phenomenon, which I've already heard about. It's called sugar daddies. That is the whole new epidemic going on with our young girls. It's cool to have a sugar daddy. Well, it's sex trafficking, okay? It is sexual exploitation. They get an older man with money and experience, and they can offer them this lavish lifestyles. And of course, they don't know what they're getting into. So I am very excited to learn about what this new lifestyle is that sex traffickers are now pursuing our young children But doesn't it burn you up that people are studying your precious child or children, and they are studying them so that they can do things that are just unthinkable? I mean, you went through the labor, the pain, the sacrifice. You did all this to instill and protect your children, and someone else wants to snatch them up and use them for their pleasure, for their money and greed, for their power and their ego. I just think that is so despicable. And so these different sex traffickers, as I've learned through training in this industry for years, is that they study us. They study young women, children, young girls. They even have, young men now, selling them money and giving them lavish lifestyles to court. I know we don't even say the word court anymore, but date or induce and entice a young girl and make her believe that they're dating and their boyfriend. And once they get comfortable and they trust this person, guess what? They are left with the person who is now going to have control over their mind, body, and soul until they see fit. And some of these young girls, they just don't even know. So that's why some of our workshops, we speak to young women on not just thinking a stranger's going to come and snatch you off the street. It's other females involved. Now they've gotten so smart where they know that women are going to be more susceptible or open to other women and young girls. So they're even recruiting other women to seduce these girls and to befriend them and call them big sisters or become their partners and lovers. And then again, that too is something they use. So, how do you prevent something like this? You're thinking, okay, Zakia, you're telling me all this, Miss Zayet. You're telling me that all of this is happening and it's so major. And what we hear after workshop when we go out and speak to the community, it just seems so massive. I don't know what to do. Well, the first thing I can tell you to do is start with your home, talking to your children, communicating with your children, making sure you ask them questions about what they're doing on the internet. And I fall victim to my kids. I have three, and they're on the computers a lot in their phones. But I do, even with all my experience, sometimes I get lazy. But then that inner voice in God says, get up, go check on them, go see when they bring their phones down at night. I'm looking at history, and my husband and I, we're seeing what's going on, and we just ask the tough questions. We ask the uncomfortable questions. I don't care how silly they think they are or vulgar, but we just go. I get down to the nitty gritty. I think in the beginning, because of my past, I had to let my children know some of the things that I was exposed to because I was struggling as a young mother dealing with baggage. And if you don't know this already, women who have been sexually exploited, again, their soul is defiled. And even me listening to the recent story of Tisha Campbell talking about her experience as a child. Oh my goodness. When you see what we have to do to survive that type of rape to the soul, body, and mind, and women are still successful, and I know she probably had her struggles, but there are so many women who don't even speak on this. I've spoken to so many older women generations that, whatever stays in this house stays in this house. You better not let us know. And they have held on to so many secrets and pain. And so this show is just going to be one of many where we want to talk to you. We want to give you a voice. There's ways where we can change the way you sound. We can do it in writing. I am a writer, love to write, where we can tell your story through writing if you want to remain anonymous, or if you just want to be a part of the movement. You can reach out to JermaineFitnessCommunity.com, contact us, and this is how we try to not even try, because I don't even like that word. This is how we affect the community. This is how we impact our community and family. So, what can you do? You need to start with your family. Start with talking to your children, believing them, training them to respect themselves and listen to their inner voice and knowing their body and what boundaries are. That is a big part of sex trafficking. People who don't teach their families and their children boundaries, it causes them to be gullible and open to anyone because they don't know what a limit is. So there are so many different things that we can do to focus on helping this epidemic. Start with your home. You also can learn and research, read up on what is happening. I know it's not politically correct to speak about sex and molestation, but we're not speaking about it, but people are studying our children so that they can entice them to do things that are unspeakable to them. Someone needs to speak about it. So, this is how you can start, just starting with your own children, your families, dealing with your own issues, making sure that you're not so uncomfortable with your baggage that you can't even relate or hear the pains or hurts of other people. Healing yourself. Women who have been sexually exploited or abused, most of the time, if they don't get healed, when the anger comes, when that frustration comes, they revert right back to that child that has been hurt and manipulated, and they lash out. So think about that woman trying to raise a family, go to work. You don't know what's going to trigger that person, and many times people who are abused, they have to go outside of themselves to just deal with. They have to remove themselves. Well, some people may call that a personality disorder or bipolar, because you really have to find something outside of yourself just to avoid the pain and the shame that is upon you. This is something that can be eradicated. I truly believe that in the group of community of advocates and other women and organizations and men who are teaching our men how to respect and love women, they're doing it too. There's another webinar that is going to be available to the public, and I will post that too if you go to JermaineFitnessCommunity.com, where they're going to be talking to men on how to eliminate violence of women and disrespect. So there are people who are fighting this cause every day, and I am one of them. So we are going to continue to talk about the stories of survivors, the story of women and children, and what you can do to look out for signs, to prevent uh, this type of enticement and persuasion, to inform each other, to look out for one another, and to basically do our part. Just sometimes having a neighborhood watch, people being out when kids are getting on and off the bus. There are literally people, again, I'm going to say it again, who are studying and watching your children. It was just on Facebook last year, a young black mother in Lithonia, nice neighborhood. She said she never thought that this would happen. Her son was going to the bus stop and the bus was running late and someone tried to snatch him. I can't remember the details altogether, but she was like, it's a boy. And I didn't think it was going to be happening. He was in sixth grade, so he's a big boy, and he just happened to be by himself. But someone came and tried to snatch my son in our neighborhood, and we live in a nice and affluent neighborhood. So it is everywhere, and it's starting as early as 3 and 4 years old. If you are watching the news, don't look on the small stories and say, oh, this is really not a big problem. It is. So get in touch with us at Jermaine Phoenix and let us know at JermainePhoenixCommunity.com what you want to know and how you want to become involved. And stay tuned and listen to the different stories and ways we're going to enlighten, um, educate you, and evolve you into hopefully being an ambassador and an advocate like us. Our goal is to help prevent these cases from ever being reported. We don't want to hear about these stories. God didn't put our children and us on this earth so that we could be used for the despicable minds of men and women who want to defile us. That's not our higher purpose at all. So we want to tell the stories of survivors because there are so many stories that have been offered to be shared with us, and we want to give healing to those women and children and young boys. And we want to replace that pain with power and desperation with just dynamic feelings of love. And we want to be able to influence our generations and our younger kids to look at what they're listening to and the videos and know the difference between entertainment and real life. You don't have to replicate everything you see from a stranger that you don't know just because he's on TV or assumes to have money, which most of the time it's not their money and it's not their material things. So before I go on a rant, I just want to end this episode saying that you can too make a difference. And if you are or ever been exploited and you haven't talked to someone, you have to heal. That's the only way that you can do better for yourself and for the people that surround you, your circle of influence. And here at Jermaine Fitness Community, we are a part of that community to help, and we would love for you to connect with us so that we can continue to eradicate the epidemic of sex trafficking. Soon I'll tell tidbits of stories of my own personal life and those that have allowed me to share their stories so that we can find different ways to be a blessing to others. I do want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Project Z Factor Show with your host here, Zayed, on 103.5 FM, Hindsight Media Radio. I will have some information on the website so that you can learn more about what we're doing. That's JamaiPhoenixCommunity.com, JAMAE Phoenix Community, all one word.com. And you can reach us at Contact Us tab on our website or Facebook. We're there as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I love social media and I am in between assistants right now, so I'm not always on there actively, but I will do better. But in the meantime, you can hear us on the next following month, and eventually we will become more consistent and have a better flow with shows more than once a month. But for right now, we're here every fourth Thursday for and there's a repeat show on Sunday. So you can listen to us and learn more about our times that we're airing on Hindsight Media Radio. Thank you everyone for connecting. I enjoy speaking with everyone that I have worked with today to talk about some of the points that I have introduced, and I look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy your week.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Project Z Factor Show, storytelling at its finest. Please join us for our next episode on the last week of the month, Thursday at 8 p.m. and Sunday at 3:30 p.m. on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM. To connect with us directly, please visit us on our social media platforms at Jermaine Phoenix Community and Project Z Factor. This has been a Jermaine Phoenix Community production. See you at the next episode.